I think maybe I wasn't recording from the beginning. So what the heck? Well, you know what? You'll just have to pick up on what I was saying. Sorry, this morning I'm not quite with it. Yeah, he was a Puritan. He doesn't fit smoothly into the Puritan sects. In his later years, he stopped attending religious services. He didn't go to church at all, but he does seem to have continued to have his own sort of belief in God. All right, and we're going to talk this morning about Paradise Lost. Sorry about that. It wasn't recording properly. Okay, so yeah. The process of creation that we hear in Genesis is just one of several creation stories that you get in the Bible. It's something that one of the problems with the Bible, and we'll see this later on today in other ways, but the Bible doesn't say just one thing. The Bible has all sorts of different things to say. And one of the creation myths or the creation versions of creation that comes not right at the beginning of the Bible, where you've got the Adam and Eve and the 7 days and all of that stuff. You've got God making the world with a compass, measuring it out. This famous painting by William Blake illustrates that process. And then you've got a woman, wisdom, who is there with God right from the beginning. Just take a look at that text for a moment. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way before his works of old. With God. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. Or in this case means before. And this is a bit odd, but or connected with air and meaning before. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no fountains abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. So wisdom was there right from the very beginning. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world, when he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth. So that compass upon the face of the depth. He's sort of reaching down into the chaos and measuring it out and shaping it out and making the world using a set of compasses to create order in the chaos of the sort of pre-existence of the world. Well, Milton reworks that in his own way. He took the golden compasses prepared in God's eternal store to circumscribe this universe of all created things. One foot he centred and the other turned round through the vast profundity obscure, and said, thus far extend, thus far thy bounds, this be thy just circumference, O world. Thus God the heaven created, thus the earth. So he is taking that creation myth of sort of measuring out the world, measuring out the chaos, and he's putting it into his own poetry. It's become a golden compass. In the Bible it's not gold, but it's become a golden compass here. And he's circumscribing the universe and all created things. 1 foot he's centered, okay, so the compass works, putting a foot, stable foot, and then drawing with a pencil or something to make the circle, all right? So he imagines the process. There we have it illustrated by William Blake. And Blake, in the 18th century, was heavily influenced by Milton, and so he illustrates the scene, and we could just look at it as one more example of Milton borrowing from the Bible, but if we look at it more closely, we'll see that Paradise Lost has got something much more complicated going on than just copying from the Bible. There's a creation going on inside Milton himself, and the Puritans themselves are interpreting. There is no possibility, really, ever, of living your life based on the Bible or anything else. You're always interpreting. You're always putting your own ideas. We can't just be a mirror that doesn't change what it absorbs. Okay, we will always interpret and change things in some way. And that's what's going on with Milton here. This creation, all right, Big Bang, or however you want to see it in scientific terms or in religious terms. What Milton is aiming to do in his poem is to justify the ways of God to men. He wants to explain why God made this world. Well, the Bible doesn't even, ask the question of why God made the world. This is what God did. Okay? Milton's already kind of changing the whole story by asking, well, why? Why bother? Why did God want to do it? Why did he want to make the world? Okay? And he's setting out to justify the ways of God to men, to explain to humans why we're all here. Okay? And in a way, the Bible doesn't even really ask the question of why God did it all, just God did. Okay? That's it, just because. There's no sort of reason. But there are a few little hints in the Bible that sort of suggest that you could develop some little hints in the Bible into some kind of rationale, some reason, some explanation for why God would set this whole thing up, why he would create the world, why he would make the Garden of Eden and put Adam and Eve in it. And this is what Milton gets involved with. He wants to tell the story that happens like before the Bible, okay, before the beginning. What made the beginning happen? All right, so that's what he's aiming for in Paradise Lost. And a large part of it focuses on the problem of evil. Where does evil come from? Wisdom was there in the beginning, but where did evil come from? And I suppose many of us in life, well, why is there Ichiwan? Where does it? Where does that come from? Where does evil come from? How did it get here? All right, because evil is right there in the Bible early on, and there's no explanation of how evil got there. Wisdom, we're told it was there in the beginning with God, but evil, we don't get an explanation. It's one of the things the Bible doesn't really tell us. But the Bible tells us one or two things. One of the things it says is that at every step of the creation, God saw that it was good. God saw that it was good. Everything that God made, according to the Bible, was good. So if there was nothing before God, and God made everything, and everything God made was good, where did evil come from? Can you see the problem? Can you see it's a confusing, it's a kind of religious and philosophical problem. But through the ages, Christianity and writers inside Christianity have been trying to answer this question and think about, well, how then, if God made everything and everything God made was good, where did bad stuff come from? Okay, and very often they come up with the explanation that, well, we're responsible for that. We made the bad stuff. Okay, God made everything, it was good, and we want to mess it up. So that's a typical sort of explanation that you get. So we're not told that God created anything bad, so where did the snake come from? That the snake tempts Eve. Where would that snake have come from? If there's nothing that God made that was bad, how could there be the snake in the Garden of Eden? Where would it have come from? Well, Milton makes up his own answer, as I say. He says that originally God was reigning in the kingdom of heaven at the beginning of everything, before this world was made. And there wasn't any evil at all. Satan, Akuma, Lucifer, the devil, was one of God's angels. And in fact, that the Bible says that Satan, before he became the devil, before he became, was pushed out of heaven, he was the greatest of all the angels. So this is taken from the Bible's own teaching. That there was no evil. Satan himself was a great angel. And God has this plan of, we're all going to live together in heaven, all the angels and God, and we're going to have a wonderful time. It's all going to be perfect and beautiful and lovely. And then Satan goes and spoils it all for God. Satan says, no, you want to be the boss. You want it all to be lovely, but you want to be the boss. See, you're just hungry for power. And Satan goes against God, and then God says, okay, if you think like that, get out. And Satan is pushed out of heaven, and God's plan for living in harmony, for having a perfect harmony, God's plan is broken. And so Satan is pushed out of heaven, and together with other angels who choose to join him, that's supposed to be about a third of the angels, agreed with Satan and joined Satan, and he creates his own underworld, his own kingdom of hell. So, yes, okay, so far, mostly we're still with the story in the Bible. The Bible doesn't say very much about this, but as far as we can understand what the Bible's saying, it says something along these lines. So, because God's original plan of everybody, all the angels living together with God in harmony in heaven, that plan has been messed up by Satan. And so God now says, okay, I have to have a fallback plan. I have to have another plan. And that's where we come in. That's where humans come in. God's fallback plan is, okay, let's make a world for man and have Adam and Eve living in that world. And then that I'll be able to get back the harmony by having the Garden of Eden, and it won't matter that Satan left. Man will take the place of Satan and the fallen angels. And in the end, man will live in heaven together with God. All right, now that's slightly pushing it because the Bible doesn't exactly say that, but it's a way of understanding the Bible. It's a way of thinking, well, what happened before the beginning of the Bible story? And that's kind of, Milton's got his logic here. All right, it's based on the Bible, but it's not quite what the Bible says. But Satan is already there in the form of the snake, and he's trying to mess up God's plan again. Okay? It's just a little bit like, the Viking man inside Ant-Man's out there to do the good. It's a little bit like that, isn't it? It's the eternal kind of story that you get of good and evil, all right? Ant-Man just wants to go out there and be a good guy, and you've got the Viking coming in and messing it all up. It's a little bit like that. And so Adam and Eve, they make the mistake of listening to Satan. They eat the forbidden fruit, and therefore they have to leave the Garden of Eden. So God's plan, once again, God's plan has been messed up. Okay, this is the way Milton understands it. Of course, God set it up. He didn't want Adam and Eve to eat the apple. He wanted them to stay and join him in the end in heaven to make up for Satan leaving. But the snake has tempted them. They've eaten the apple, and now they have to leave the Garden of Eden. So once again, God's plan is messed up. Okay, that's go, you fallen creatures. You no longer belong in this paradise. So God now has to make another plan. This time he's going to send his own son, Jesus, who's going to die and save mankind, so that in the end, finally, mankind will be able to join God in the kingdom of heaven, and that will take the place of Satan and the other fallen angels. Okay? Well, that's Milton's way of understanding the Bible. It's very sort of eccentric in a way, because the Bible doesn't really say it like that. Okay? But he's trying to come up with some explanation of why this world is the way it is and why God did it the way he did it. God had to do it like that because Satan kept messing up his plans. And so in the end, his latest plan was, I'll send Jesus Christ to sacrifice himself and so save humans. Of course, that was 2,000 years ago and was still not exactly saved, but that's the way that he rationalizes it. So, again, this is William Blake's illustration. The 18th century poet and artist William Blake illustrates the scene. It's Michael foretells the crucifixion, and it's illustrating the scene from Paradise Lost. Now, Milton's epic actually ends before the birth of Christ. He doesn't get as far as Christ being born, but he has all of that foretold, because the story is told by one of the archangels who's explaining to Adam, what this world is all about. So that's the framework in which Milton sets up the structure of Paradise Lost. Well, we can see then that Milton is building on the creation myth of Genesis. We can see he's trying to give an explanation of why God made this world in the way that he did. And he wants to make an explanation that can be fitted in, reconciled with what's in the Bible. It's not exactly what the Bible says, but it fits with what the Bible says. But there's something else going on here. We have a very specific social and political context for Milton's work. He's writing at the time of the Puritan Revolution. He lived all the way through that Puritan Revolution period, and I think we need to see his work related to his culture, his society, his time, and not just this sort of big kind of biblical, philosophical theme about why humans are all here on the planet. So this story of Satan rebelling against God is coming up against the background of Oliver Cromwell rebelling against King Charles I, which really confuses things quite a lot, because, of course, in his poem, Milton wants to justify God to man, and Satan is the one who's supposed to be in the wrong. But politically, in real life, Milton is against the king, and he's in favour of Cromwell. So in the revolution that's going on around him, he likes the rebel. He likes Cromwell. He favours the one who's going against the king. All right, so there's a kind of twist here, and which complicates our understanding enormously of Milton's work. In Paradise Lost, Milton is defending the actions of God. But in the political upheavals of the 17th century, he defended the actions of Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell is more like in the position of Satan, being the rebel against the king, against the leader. So it's not at all a straightforward tale, because Cromwell's sympathy for the underdog, for the rebel, it comes out in the poem. In 1649, Milton published a book called Iconoclastes, in which he defends the beheading of King Charles. He argues that it was the right thing to do to kill the king. Okay, there's the king's head being held up in front of the crowd there. All right. This was, I think I've tried to emphasize it before, this was huge for the English people. Okay, for the English people, it was, he's not just the king. Remember, he's the leader of the church. It's not like maybe in Japan the emperor was considered to be God. It's not quite as strong as that, but he's very close to God. He's the leader of the church, and that's his head that's just been cut off. I mean, the country was in a state of shock. All right, and Milton agreed with it. Okay, so how can he write a poem about Satan was wrong to fight against God, and yet politically Cromwell is right to fight against the king? Can you see the conflict, the contradiction that's going on here?